everyone. Welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm Dr. Ashwati. Students, in this lecture, I'm going to discuss about Kabir. I must be thinking Kabir is a spiritual leader, but yes, one of his ideas has a very important political tone as well. So Kabir is part of the unit number 3, Indian political thought. Kabir belonged to the medieval period, and it was during this period he addressed the problems of that period, and he has given his idea of Begumpura, the ideal polity basically, that we will be discussing today. So let's move to our first slide with reference to which is an introduction to Kabir Das. So he was very important, or he made a very important contribution to the Bhakti movement in India at that time. So we had like different types of variants were also there. Bhakti movement was not limited to northern parts of India, but it had influences in the southern part as well. So Bhakti was an alternative and to protest the existing social order. As you know that the social order, it had deep contradictions, different types of divisions, caste divisions, religious differences, so many things were there, because medieval period is considered to be as the period of what we call it as different types of social clashes were there. And Kabir, being born in that period, he tried to address to the issues of his time, and he is the person who tried to produce a solution to the prevailing problems. He belonged to the 15th century, poet and saint, and born in the city of Varanasi or Banaras, which is located in the Uttar Pradesh state of India. And like being a person, he belonged to the like what we say, like he was actually from a very marginalized community, and he actually tried to gather, like what we say, through his ideas, through his dohas, he was capable of capturing the attention of the marginalized people, and he had a great fan following as well. Moving ahead. So his works are actually, many of his disciples later on, they also compiled his dohas and various other poems and whatever it is, like what you call it as the poems, dohas, they were actually compiled into various types of, like, you know, into certain collections as well, which are known by these names: Adi Granth, Panchvani, Sarvangi, Bijak and Granthavali. So these are like, they are not limited to this, but yes, these are the major ones. And many actually, like even after a century, or like it is still being, like when I was in my school time, like in the part like the Hindi course had kind of like, you know, in the poem section, every time we had this Kabir Das dohas were also there. So they were actually, he tried to address the people in the most, what we say, in the most language which was accessible to the rural poor as well. So that is one of the reason why he was he had a great fan following, or we can say that in these days we call it as like fan following. In those days it was called as the followers, right? So please try to remember the names of his works: Adi Granth, Panchvani, Sarvangi, Bijak and Granthavali. And his ideas were not limited to Uttar Pradesh, it had spread across the northern belt specifically, and it had a great influence over like in Punjab and various other parts of northern India. And his ideas were recreated, reinterpreted as well through many of his followers as well as by his own disciples. Moving next. So Kabir Das, he rejected the idol worship. This is a very important point, that according to him, why are you like, you know, when you are good to yourself, when your actions are pure. He actually was a person who was more action oriented, like when your actions are pure, then it would actually generate good outcomes as well. So here Kabir rejected the idol worship, and he also criticized the theory of reincarnation. He questioned the four ashrams like the brahmacharya, then after the grahast, then you have the vanaprastha and the sannyas. All these ashrams were also criticized by him, as well as the 6 types of philosophy which was part of the Hindu tradition, that also he criticized. Then after, he also criticized the social hierarchy and the zamindari system. For him, the Chaturvarna or the caste system actually created the oppressed ones as well as the dominating communities. For him, it actually hindered the social progress, and it actually created the compartmentalization in the society. According to him, this was not a good sign for the social progress as well. When we have to analyze Kabir, like I have studied in my time, I have studied Kabir through the lens of a poet, right? As a person who was a saint, and as well like the way I have studied Kabir Das in the Hindi literature. But yes, later on when I was doing my masters, Kabir's tradition became part of the syncretic tradition. Okay, it is called syncretic tradition that tried to bridge various communities into one idea, that is humanity. That you should not be like prescribing to some sort of narrow mindedness, but rather than that, it spoke more about bringing the people together, like people who are not divided by the caste hierarchies, class hierarchies, or religious hierarchies. There is no divisions like us and them, or let's say that the compartmentalization of rich and poor, or high society people, low society people. The Bhakti movement actually tried to bring people together under the one umbrella or one idea of humanity. So we have to understand Kabir through the prism of as a political theory. So we will check out in his idea of Begumpura. Now let me say that there are so many thinkers in political theory that you have studied in, let's say that you have already studied in the first unit number 1 also, about there are some thinkers like who are very utopian. Let's say that, let's take an example of Plato. Plato was an utopian, right? The way he created the allegory of caves, or let's say the idea of myth of metals, or let's say that okay, you have to have a philosopher king. According to him, that would be providing with the best opportunity, or that would actually only in a system of like what you call it as the system of when you have a philosopher king, then only that is the only wise man there who can actually do the governance in a better way than when compared to other people, because he was addressing to the situation of the time. And I have already mentioned in various of my classes or lectures that in order to understand political thought, whether it is Indian political thought or non-Indian political thought, when you are looking at one particular thinker, then you should actually understand the life sketch as well, like their social status, in what sort of political conditions they were living. All these things are actually very important ones. So now we will address his idea or the ideal polity called Begumpura. So Kabir actually, he dreamed of creating Begumpura. Begumpura is a kind of an ideal world. Just like Hobbes in Leviathan also, the way he said that the social contract tradition that he initiated, similar to that of what we call it as the Rousseau's Emile. Rousseau's treatise on education is founded, you can find it in the Emile. So in the Emile, he is saying that okay, there is a child and who studies in a countryside, and he is limited to basic knowledge in the first years of his life. So here also we can also equate Kabir with such thinkers like Plato, whether it is Machiavelli also. Machiavelli also made an utopian understanding, like he tried to create a genre to, or a kind of a genre that mirror to the princess genre, right? Where you are actually giving advices. This is same with that of Zia Barani as well. Ziauddin Barani also tried to give a kind of an advisories to the king. They were not into the practical implementation of the same. They tried to create an utopian idea. This is the same case with that of John Rawls also, who belong to that of the social contract tradition. So we have so many options here. So I was just trying to boost your morale by telling you certain, you are well aware about the Western theories about social contract, you are well aware about the Western traditions about creating an utopian world, but you have not actually studied with from the perspective of the Indian political or Indian like Bhakti movement thinker like Kabir. So what is Begumpura? Begumpura is an imagined and ideal polity. So he says that this is the best political community that you can have, where there exists the equality between the people. There is no hierarchy between the people. There is no communal violence, no sort of communally charged population who like have a kind of a set of people have a like a communal superiority, others being like being in a vulnerable communal inferiority position, right? So it is a kingdom of God according to him. A kingdom of God. By the God he is not talking about, he is like he rejected the idol worship. It is not God that you can find in some sort of statues or anything. It is a kingdom of God where the pure people, the pure minded people, here purity means the soul, that the purity of the soul, where the people actually come together and they live in an egalitarian society. So this is a kind of an egalitarian society. No division among the people, no elitism. It is a stateless society also. It means that there is no state, there is no government or administrative setup. People are living in a complete bliss. And no corruption, because he was addressing to the problems of his days. Basically, the zamindari system was there and the prevailing political order was also very exploitative. So he was actually addressing to the situation. That's why he created, and through his dohas and idea like his poems, he tried to create an utopian understanding of Begumpura. No surplus extraction, it means that one class is not actually acquiring all sorts of capital and putting others at a vulnerable position. Here he is speaking about a kind of a system which is like, we can say that something kind of a collective form of economic production also he dreamed about. And this Begumpura was premised on the ideas of justice, equality and freedom. It means that every other person residing in that sort of political community or a social community, whatever we call it as, where people would have access to justice, equality and freedom. But yes, the Begumpura was criticized by many feminist thinkers also, because Kabir did not address to the issues of the gender violence and various other aspects associated with the women, like the social problems and various others, because he looked more at the issues of what we say, the creation of a political order, an egalitarian political order, but he did not specifically look at the women's issues. Okay, so that's all students in this lecture. Hope you liked it. And students, stay tuned for more lectures in future. See you in another lecture. Bye.